Ladies and gentlemen, likers and subscribers, hobbyists, model makers, nerds of all kinds, welcome. I'm the Glue and Paper Guy. Life happens, ladies and gentlemen. As I was editing this episode, I found that I just couldn't stop myself from finishing John Jay's original kit. I'll give you a little tour and show you in a slideshow the finished product. All of the concepts that I used to finish that off are presented in one way or another in the other kit, and we'll cover them in more detail as we go. So there you go, guys. Scope creep evident everywhere. The lamination of the tool, the Q-tip shafts, marvelous things. There's wooden dowel inside the joints. There's wooden dowel in here. In every case, it allowed me to glue caps on and make the thing look more real and complete. A happy accident with the lens. Since the mat board that the lens is mounted on is black on one side, white on the other, there's a dark line in the back which tends to demarcate the lens itself and give it just a touch more depth. Each of the mounting tabs, a different place than I expected. I thought the corners were where it mounted to the sky crane. It's not the case. I suspect that the corners are actually just bumpers to keep it square. The vehicle locks to the sky crane in these three positions. So I flipped the paper, I colored it black on the back first to make it look more complete, and then folded it over and folded it up. I avoided the strong temptation to drill out those little holes, which should have been done. The high gain mounted on something to give it some depth. These lugs on the four corners mounted with laminated to give them some depth. And an admission of a flat-out failure. These sides I had to cut from the second pattern and put on the outside because I mounted the part backwards. This belonged here and vice versa. It turned out to be a happy accident to the degree that the inside now has greater detail than it once did. The bogies that I've belabored so hard work. The wheels turn. I think we're... It came out much nicer than I expected. The drill bit mounts are optional in the kit, and so I availed myself of them. Give it a little more depth and interest on the forward side. There, right there in that view, you get a really good look at the tool, which looks more like it's something. I suspect that actually those parts fold downward in some way, but in this case I just left it flat. I like it. It has detail in the bottom as well, and it'll certainly get pride of place in the collection. Full time, Mr. Pradana's effort. We'll start with the chassis and proceed from there. I'll detail something inside the chassis to stiffen it, and we'll look for opportunities to improve. I can see a place where I would cut these cables out and lay that exact same thing right over top of that. Suddenly there would be depth to the cabling. Similar opportunities all over. So, with that, let me do a little ham-handed Ken Burns and put this one in the can. Scoring is boring. Some things to note: these red dots have a significance, and those orange symbols have a significance. Julius puts on his pattern directions saying that the orange laugh-in things come to places that indicate you have to cut that away. So this circle has to be cut away. All those dots is where you're going to put glue. Now, of course, I would probably use more glue than just on that little red dot, but you know the thought occurs. These are mostly squares. Pay close attention. That is a seam. We know that because it matches this surface and this surface. Not immediately apparent. What? In the name of all is holy is that. That is the body of the RTG. And it takes a minute to realize what's going on here. Yeah, hexagonal, 2, 4, 6, sided. And those tabs at the here, these guys, indicate where you score across. The whole part sits diagonally on the rear of the chassis, and so you score these lines here. And when you're folded up, it'll fit. That's that marvelous wigwag bogey. I scored it, although I suspected I'm going to laminate it onto thicker material and do something different with it. There's a lot of little guys here, all standard stuff. Cylinders we've been over before. Boxes, pretty straight up. The next step here is I'm going to cut this out and go back in with a caliper and figure out how big sections of heavier material will be to create a frame inside that stands it up more strongly, makes it thicker and heavier. I have a scored box. Pretty straightforward. It's just a box. I want it to be strong. I don't want it to flex as I construct it. So I need an interior to make it stronger. In times past, I would simply use the back of a tablet, and I've assessed this chewed up chunk that you've seen before. There's enough area here probably to do what I want to do. But I happened to find something that I had saved that's probably easier. Something I purchased recently, probably a calendar, came with this big square piece of cardboard. It's corrugated, but it's also light and small. It's pretty rigid. So I'm going to see if we can cut that down to size. The best way to do that is to know the sizes of these things. In times past, I would have simply laid it out and made some pencil sketch notes and then carved it to size. This time we're going to measure. I'm not going to just make guesses with pencils and then try to make it fit. I want to get the accuracy necessary to get it to go in there right the first time and save me a lot of time and hassle. So I'm going to make a top and a bottom, and then flip it over and temporarily hold it together long enough to get a guess of the size here. I could probably do some simple arithmetic too. And I'll either do an X pattern through it or a pair of V's of cardboard, which amounts to the same thing. As long as it is exactly the right height, it will never be seen. It needs to keep it strong. That's it. In this case, I will probably do ends as well. As you see, things hang off both these ends. So as I discuss this, we begin to wonder whether we're not simply just going to build a box and slide it down in there. Having done that, then we have all the sides, and all the sides are strong. And we go from there. One other thought before I actually get to cutting. There's method to my madness, and it's logical if you think about it. Obviously, I'm not paying any attention to the number of parts and putting them in by order or any of that. But I am going to build the middle and work out. And I most particularly need the middle in order to have some base to construct the bogies at the end. So we start with the middle and work out. I'll build this box and then it's a greebly fest from there. With that, I think we'll cut and show off the results. Well, gentle viewers, by gosh, that's a box. What I've done is work way too hard, but what I get is a very strong, very accurate box that will become the chassis. This is the dorsal side. The ventral side has no detail. I'm tempted to look online and see if there's something that needs to go here. As I recall, John J. actually did detail that. But as to the process of the box, first, when you cut very accurately, and we've done some of that. Second, you're scored accurately. Then I have this perfect shape, which I began to work up one step at a time out of that magical cardboard. With a small simple sample, I can show you more. That's, just like the box that your Nintendo came in, but much thinner. And so it's quick, it's easy to cut, it weighs nothing. And like all paper, quite critically actually, you can sand it. That lip, which is so observable there, is because I ended up sanding the sizes of the plates that I measured until they truly fit. Truly fit is defined as accommodating the thickness of the cardboard itself, which is give or take a 1/16 of an inch, and the shape of the thickness of the paper as well. So when this goes in there, it allows the paper to lay down absolutely flat. I paid attention to where I glued so that I would have a place for my tab to go in. And this tab goes in. And I will use the glue stick on the exterior surface here. I will use the glue stick on the interior surfaces, the exterior surfaces of these side pieces, two of which are already in place, and the bottom piece is glued in place. And for my convenience, I made a center strut as well. What that allowed me to do was to have a more square assembly while I was putting it together, and I could measure it more clearly and then get a more accurate layout. When we're done, I have a series of extremely square, extremely accurate pieces of cardboard, each custom fit and glued in. I measured the originals by, taking the width and the height and the depth as appropriate. Then leveraged my favorite assertion that paper is wood. And each of these was sanded to give that exactitude of fit. The purpose of this box is, as it has been, to be the center of the rest of the model. So it has to be strong, it has to be supported, it has to be as accurate as the rest of it will be in order to present the best possible display. Right back to the beginning. That's a lot of work for a little cardboard box. But without this little cardboard box, it's almost pointless to do anything else. You can indeed build it exactly the way Julius intended. And it will work. But you better not sneeze in the same room where this thing's sitting on a shelf, because it will go across the room. Moreover, when you try to do stuff to it, the side plates will be puckering on you. End of the day, a little bit of patience, a little bit of care, and you immeasurably improve the quality of the output without causing any permanent impact to Julius's design. This is the Greebly Fest. You recognize my magic box, tough as nails. I've added some details here which I'll demonstrate in a moment. There's the RTG. I need to look up, figure out what that thing is, because it's on both of these kits. And positioning antenna, I don't know. High gain, that's not the high gain, that's the high gain there. These are the little wings that are evident on the other model, and they're forward opposite numbers. All the rest of this, in comparison to images that I've looked at, appears somewhat random. Julius has built a beautiful thing. It will be magnificent when it's complete. It is not 100% accurate to the original. The one thing that he omitted or chose not to do, I'm not sure which, is the connection between this guy and the bogey system, which I'll have to recreate. I've scope creeped this pretty thoroughly in a lot of ways. The first place to go with that is the chassis. I simply cut the wires out of the other pattern and then glued them on. The ends, etc., are laminated pieces that have been added, colored and added. Particularly in this case, it looks very effective because it looks like an ancient ribbon cable. These black ones, unfortunately, were just too small to try to do. I wanted to, and then found that I would have had to use an alternate material, which I chose not to do. Didn't do as well as I could have or should have with the cameras here. In fact, you see a flaw. His pattern does not represent the tool racks that are on the other one. I'm not sure which is accurate. When I looked at the bottom of the chassis originally, I found that it was just plain dull. 20 minutes, 30 minutes in Visio, I recreated some plates, and the little symbol there that equates to these as close as I could quickly or easily accomplish. So we have now a really strong box. You can tell that it just, shaky cam aside, you can tell that this thing is not going to move. It's a nice solid base. This tube I did straight up. There's nothing special inside it. Some of these other surface details, this one has a pair of discs. Way more effort than it's worth sanding those things down until they fit with a capital F. The result earns it, though. That's a nice little, perfect little pill. The original iteration was simply multiple laminations. That's somewhat crude, which I obviously didn't repeat. This guy is so tiny it just required one level. When it goes together, I'll put a little glue on the inside of that ring and it'll hold itself in place. This last one was supposed to be elevated as well. I just didn't bother. It's different. The rules of Greeblies are make it look believable, don't hesitate to make it different, and make it visually interesting. These 4 side boxes look like saddlebags, I don't know. They, a couple of them match exactly with their dark dots. The others are mirrored. So I rolled the dice and laid them out in some, that's the way they're going to be. The brackets in the front have no detail on the top in this pattern. Fine, again, I'd have to go back to the source. But I added some width and interior detail by reversing from the second pattern and then putting it together. So the top is reinforced and the sides are reinforced. The front, that was superfluous. Lamination continues wherever it seemed appropriate. I elevated details that look like they should be more prominent. These guys, I don't know what that is. That's like a 9-pin serial. I wonder if he simply got an icon or a dingbat is the technical name for those little pieces of graphics. Windows has a dingbat font, and for all I know, a 9-pin serial connector is in it. So that's the whole dog and pony show. This will be the base for the arm. The camera mount goes here. That, believe it or not, is a 5 in my scrawl. And I've done all I'm going to do here. I'm going to test the final assembly of this stuff to my Nano Bots. We'll let you take a look at that and go from there. You can't let the nanobots have all the fun. I let them do the major part of the construction here, and then moved on to the tool and the arm. The ultimate assembly would be something like this. Shaky hands. Shaky hands actually go right to the problem. If you look at this, that is Julius's original intention for the longer of the two tubes in the arm. You see the obvious flaws. Great idea, just didn't fly. It's not really round, it's a mess. That being the case, I chose this different method. You're beginning to find that lamination is a favorite trick of mine. Well, it is again. That is slightly larger than Julius's intent. That would be opaque to a viewer of the finished piece. But the fit and finish is 100 times better. So I shot a brief time lapse of how I pulled this little trick. In that shot there, it's obvious. That is good old-fashioned 20-pound cheap copy Bond glued to the outside of a carefully selected and sanded wooden dowel. Analogous to what I use for other joints on the kit. In this case, these tubes are empty. They went together well, and they actually look pretty darn good, at least in my eye. the drills here are pieces of dowel, black marker, sandpaper and black marker. You can see that the drill head got the same plussing up that the other parts of the device got in various places. And I think it added some really effective detail to the whole thing. I'll show the time lapse of how I created this longer tube. And I'll show the time lapse of how I created this longer tube. That's pretty much the wrap